Coming up this week on the TDL Show at 9:42, we've got a bit of a catch-up show. We've not had news for a couple of weeks. So Gary's here and we're going to be talking about new builds of Windows 11. Why have we not had anything major? What does the lack of watermark mean? Does it mean Windows 11 24H2 is done? We're going to be talking about EV batteries, standard batteries in EV, 12-volt batteries in EV, which is driving Gary mad a little bit. Got some music tech news. I've got a special show coming up next week, which I'm going to talk about in this week's show, which I hope you can join me for. Right, let's get straight to Gary. Gary, good evening.
Good evening. Welcome to my car.
Yes, well, as an EV owner, you practice what you preach, and you're charging in your car, charging.
Yeah, and making use of the time while I do it. Never waste a charging session.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, I've timed this so I can do it while I'm on the podcast, but normally I time it when I'm having food or whatever like that, so it's not never a bad thing. I'm on the road today, but this won't take long. I mean, it's I was down at about 30% when I arrived here. It's saying 45 minutes to 100% or 20 minutes to 80%, and normally I don't charge to 80%. Although I'll probably charge to 100% tonight because we'll be on the show.
Yeah.
It's good to have my
good way of doing it. Yeah.
I was going to say it's good to have my car back because I had an issue with it a week or so ago. Not the big battery, but the little 12-volt battery failed. So the sort of the little ones, and it was interesting, and I will talk more about that later.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. We haven't had a lot of Windows builds to talk about recently. We had one a couple of weeks ago, which we didn't talk about last week because we had the guest on last week, so I could mention that one. And there's a few minor builds that have come from Microsoft, but they've been pretty quiet on that front. So we can explain, and I'll maybe say why I think that is. I've got a few bits and pieces that I've been working on the music tech stuff, so I'm going to talk about that. And someone gave me a great tip on sampling, auto sampling tools as well, so I can mention that as well. So so let's start off with the battery news then. 12-volt batteries. These are old school batteries.
These are the old school batteries. They're like lead acid batteries you have in all cars, and you know the sort of the starter motor battery. And back when cars used the starter motor, these were pretty rugged things, and they could turn the car over, and they lasted a reasonable while. What seems to have happened recently, and this is not just for electric cars, this is for all cars, the manufacturers may have skimped out a bit on the 12-volt batteries. It was interesting talking to the recovery man who came out to me. He's saying that virtually all the call-outs they have at the moment are for failed 12-volt batteries, be it on diesel cars, petrol cars, battery cars. I mean, basically you're okay because he said BMWs don't tend to have it, but other manufacturers do. And it does seem to be a really common thing with Kias, which I've got. So a number of people on the EV6 forum have said their 12-volt battery's gone. Now, with an electric car, there's also the slight complication that obviously with a petrol car you're charging the 12-volt battery from the alternator. With the electric car, you have to charge it from the big battery. And there's a lot of reasons sort of questioning about why do we actually need a 12-volt battery? We've got this massive other battery. Well, part of that is isolation, so you can do things without the main high voltage being engaged, but there's other ways you could potentially do that with capacitors and things, and or you could use a better type of battery to do it. Some which doesn't need topping up quite so regularly, because 12-volt lead acids do drain over fairly rapidly. But one of the big issues seems to be that we're relying more and more on the 12-volt battery to power all the in-car systems. And as you know, in-car systems have got way more complicated recently. I mean, whereas before you'd have a little tiny screen, now you've got lots of big screens, and we know from laptops how big screens drain power very rapidly. You're powering seats, you're powering windows, everything's electrically powered now in a modern car. I mean, some cars even have gear sticks which pop out when you power them up, and that's 12-volt battery powered. And it does seem to be putting a lot of strain on the 12-volt batteries, which may not be as good quality as they were previously. And it's becoming quite a common problem. I mean, probably quite a lucrative place if you're good thing if you're a battery replacement company, but not so good if you're anybody else. I mean, I was just talking to a lot of people in the Kia group, and they were basically saying, "Oh, we've had ours replaced under warranty." And virtually everybody on that group had their 12-volt battery replaced under warranty, which is makes you worry about the longevity of the batteries. But it's certainly interesting because you don't realise just how much. Because you wouldn't. I mean, certainly with a battery vehicle, you wouldn't think it would rely so much on the 12-volt battery. It doesn't. I mean, it's not firing a starter motor or anything, but you cannot start the car without the 12-volt battery being powered because it needs to effectively flip the relay, which allows the main volt, the high voltage battery, to be powered.
Yes, yeah. Because I was going to say, couldn't they do a step down transformer type arrangement? But yeah, if you want the isolation, you need the relay and you power to the relay.
I mean, as you said, you could have something like a capacitor in there. You could have a MOSFET or something in between the HVV, which gets powered up and then is available for the next time it's started. Obviously, you have to allow for things like people leaving cars at airports for 3 weeks or whatever and still being able to start it when they get back. You don't want anything with drains. Lithium-ion batteries have been used. LiPo batteries quite often used nowadays. I mean, while I had this problem, I just took to carrying a lithium-ion charge pack around with me, which for starting it, so it would actually start even if the 12-volt was failing, and I could actually charge that off the car while I was travelling along, so it was ready for the next time I needed to restart it. But the problem was that the battery was failing. Basically, I forget what they actually call it, but if it's left low for a long time and it was constantly going low, it basically ruins the battery. Ionified, I think, something like that. Anyway, I've probably got that completely wrong, but basically that just means it starts to get to the point where it won't charge very much. So, and it wouldn't keep its charge. So it would basically go flat overnight. So you'd come home after a long journey, it'd be fine, and then you'd get up in the morning and it wouldn't start. So I had a little lithium-ion pack, and it took such little juice off that to actually start the electric, because it's not turning over a starter motor. It literally needed milliamps to get the relay twitched, and then the HV cut in, and everything was fine. But there were a few things which really bugged me about it when it failed, and these I think are common things with 12-volt systems. The boot is 12-volt powered. You can't open the boot if the 12-volt actually battery fails.
Right. So you can't put your charger in there then.
No. I mean, you could get to it through the hatches behind, but so it's still a worry.
But you can't even unlock your car, can you?
No, I mean, to be fair, it wouldn't actually lock, because it got to that point where once the 12-volt warning comes on, it won't actually lock the car. Which is actually probably quite a good thing, because you can't end up get locked out. But the one thing which really bugs me is the charge port won't open. Because if you could plug the charge port in, that actually would cause it to start charging the 12-volt. Because it does when it's plugged in charging, it constantly charges 12-volt as well. So that seems like really poor design, and this is apparently quite a common thing with electrically opening ports. And not just on battery electric cars, it's on petrol cars as well. You can't open the petrol port if the fuel tank cap if you haven't got power. And it seems to like. I mean, I guess it's less of an issue with a petrol car, because if you haven't got a 12-volt battery working, you can't start it, so you're not going to be wanting to put petrol in. But it's definitely a frustration and poor design. And you do think that there's some really poor design on all cars, which is sort of left over from the past. And really, with electric vehicles, we should be looking at ways of replacing that 12-volt battery with something better.
I mean, is it still the same, one of those big, car battery size? Is it still one of them? Is it? Yeah.
Some of them have smaller batteries. I mean, some electric vehicles. My old I-Pace actually apparently had two 12-volt batteries, and I never saw one of them. But some of them are little tiny ones, but most of them are the old 12-volt lead acid batteries. Mine's got a large battery in this. But
I wonder why they use lead acid batteries in when they've got so much battery technology now. You can make any technology for just to provide the 12 volts.
Well, lead acids have got a lot going for them. They're easy to charge, so you're not having to worry about heat problems when you're charging them. They're easy to trickle charge, so that's a definite advantage for something you want to trickle charge on the move. They don't tend to lose capacity over time. There's a lot going for lead acid batteries. There are a lot of negatives as well. They're heavy and but you think about it. I mean, that's actually another thought I thought. One of the problems with electric vehicles is trying to keep the weight down. So 12 volts battery is quite a hefty thing. If you could get rid of that apart from the circuit, you'd actually gain some performance effectively. So, yeah, there's a lot of potential reasons why it's not such a good idea to have a 12 volt in your car these days in the same way. I mean, and there were some vehicles which use 24 volt systems in the way back, but I don't think many of those exist anymore. But yeah, it's definitely interesting. I mean, okay, they would have to power stuff by 12 volt, and you can certainly see once you've got the car started, the transformer can cut in and you've got the high voltage, and that's fine. But yeah, it's definitely it's an interesting one.
Yeah. All that battery technology and sophistication and charging rates and smartphone alerts thing, and the whole car can be let down by a 12 car battery. Yeah. It just seems like I suppose like they've sourced the cheaper car battery, because car batteries, an old technology, and they can just source them off the market, and they've probably, like you said, they've just gone for the budget one, and it's probably lack of testing really over a long period of time, and
and also I'm not. I mean, I won't let the EVs off the hook totally on this, because I suspect sometimes the EV technology hasn't been designed 100% properly, and it's not charging the 12 volts properly, so that because if they drop to a low voltage at any 12 volt, even the best 12 volt lead acid battery in the world would still have this problem. That once it gets low voltage for over a period of time, it starts to degrade. And so I think there are some problems with some, and I certainly know this was an issue with some of the Jaguar, not just the I-Pace, but generally the Jaguars, where the over-the-air the remote control system would sometimes leave the battery draining power, but sort of switched on and still ticking away while it wasn't being charged. You think they'd actually have a system which would automatically detect a low voltage on the 12 volt and immediately start charging it?
Yeah.
But apparently Kias do, but it'll only kick in a certain number of times before it decides that the battery must be faulty and stops doing it, which seems like a very poor design to me.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
So
it's one of those things where they could probably invest a bit more in that, but it's probably picked a lot of off-the-shelf parts and not spent too much time on that, and spent time on other areas.
Yes, a lot of investment in the high voltage systems and not so much in the low voltage. I think it'll come. I mean, Tesla have started out eliminating their 12 volt batteries. Others will follow, I suspect. I'll be interested to see what the Chinese do on this. But yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's funny how you all this high tech stuff and you get a dead carb from an old school battery that used to have that problem with a Morris Marina. When the alternator didn't work. I had to fit a new alternator to it. They're funny, aren't they? It's the technology. It comes around and it's still in use.
Yeah, indeed. Well, we've got 7 minutes. Yeah. 7 minutes until I got to 80% on this charge now, so we're doing pretty well on this rapid charge here.
And like you said, normally you would only get to 80 because you don't really need to go to 100, because that's that last 20% takes the longest.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, right. So, I mean, by the time I get to 80%, I'll have almost 200 miles of range. So that would be fine for most journeys. It's I mean, 120 miles is what they reckon you should really charge to it between stops in the UK, because 120 miles is basically 2 hours driving, and you should really stop at that point. But I don't rely on the infrastructure that much. it's got a lot
Yeah,
better,
yeah,
and
that's right.
definitely a lot of chargers being built at the moment. But yeah, it's taking time. I'm actually hoping to have a couple of the charge point operators on for interviews in a few weeks' time. We can discuss a few things, particularly the I posted a list, a comparison between domestic electricity costs and the on the road electricity costs, and it's noticeable that domestic electricity costs have dropped this year, but the on the road costs have actually gone up, and the margin is between the two has widened this year. And and there are some good reasons for that. It's not all just about the cost you pay, because there's things like the standing charge and everything else, and some of the business rates which have gone up as well. But yeah, it's definitely, there's definitely a widening margin there. So we can talk a bit about that, but also to talk about the fact that the network is really is expanding very rapidly at the moment. Lot more charges going out.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, oh, that'd be good. Yeah, good to get some more guests on. We've had some good guests recently, and we carry on doing that. It's good to get guests from different areas, and like I said previously, if any listeners have got any suggestions for guests, I've had a couple that I'm following up on. Then let us know, because we're always keen to talk to different people.
Yeah.
It could be any technology. We don't mind talking about old or new. We'll talk about any technology. We do like getting different technologies on the show. And talking new technologies, it has been a bit quiet on the Windows front. We didn't, because we had a guest last week, we didn't talk about builds. So we did get a build the week before, but things have been very quiet. All we got on the last one was a fix. So we're currently on 26100 for Dev and Canary, and they're still on the same builds for Dev and Canary. And there's been not much. There was no build at all last week. No watermark on these either. So I think what's happened is Microsoft have got to the point where the Dev 24H2 is ready for OEMs. So it's not finished because Windows as a service never really finished, is it? But for OEMs ready to ship new PCs with a build on, they'll ship with this 24H2 build, and then there'll be a day one pack which catches it up effectively to whatever. Because I know we always assume that machines get updated straight away, but there are some people who perhaps aren't able, you're not on the internet or whatever. Although it's pretty hard to set Windows up without being on the internet nowadays. But yeah, so it ships with what they would consider like a day, the viable version, and then there's when you pick it up in October, then it gets a patch to get to the latest one. So I think that's the stage we're at now, which is why we're seeing not a lot of changes. Dev Canary on the same builds, no watermark. That points to, I think, that 24H2 is at a milestone that they can ship, but not done. Microsoft are keen to say that on the blog post. Just because the watermark's not there, it doesn't mean to say that Windows is done. It just means, I think, that this is a watermark. This is a marker point. This is the one that goes, and then after this is signed off, that gets the version that gets shipped to OEMs, and then we start to get more changes. Whether we'll get to the divergence of the builds, then I think we probably will at that point. So maybe even this week we might see a divergent build, or we might see a couple more minor updates and then the divergent. So Canary will go off on its way. Dev will probably stay with the 24H2 until October, and then Dev will move to the beta channel. 24H2 go to beta, then to release preview. So that's why I think we're not getting tons of new features. And of course, there is a event in May, a Microsoft event. I think it's classed as a Surface and AI or Windows or one of the, I'm not sure how they're billing it, but there is a Microsoft event. So maybe there's some new features. I think new features around AI anyway, Copilot new features. Maybe they're saving some of those for the event, and then they'll get into the dev. There's no point in putting in the dev build now and let everybody try it and then announce them, is there? So I think they'll do it the other. Yeah, they'll do it the other way. So it could be that all these features will ship. They're probably already in there. The code is already probably there, and they'll just flick a switch with a control switch to say turn these new features on. So we might see some next month we might see some AI features, and then we might get to test them. So I think that's where we are with 24H2. So we've had a couple of we had a release preview and we had a beta build last week as well. Just a couple of things around sort of apps, tying up of apps and where they show, and some changes with the desktop spotlight and Copilot docking and things like that. So that was 22635.3495. And actually, we had a Windows 10 release preview build this week. I don't know how many people are on Windows 10 and release preview, but there's mainly there were fixes and around that, because obviously no new features. But we've got 12 months of support for Windows 10. Is it next year, isn't it?
Yeah, paid support.
Yeah.
One thing I did spot, and I haven't got the exact details of it, but the upgrade hold on some of the Intel drive equipment has been removed for Windows 11. So some people on Windows 10 will now actually be able to upgrade to Windows 11.
Yeah, I don't actually. Yeah, I just saw that pop up and I forgot to have a look. Do you know which process? Is it the recent ones, or is it some of those older ones?
It was a specific piece of Intel equipment, and I've completely forgotten what it was. I did see it earlier.
I'll check it and include a link in the show notes. But yeah, so I think they're trying to make it as available to everybody. They're not gonna. I don't think they're gonna back down completely, are they? And go with the unsupported processor I've got on my 7th gen i5 or whatever.
And I don't think this release was actually on a processor. I think it was some other piece of Intel equipment, but.
Right.
I may be wrong, because I'm just remembering something I glanced up very briefly earlier, but thought I'd flag it up.
Yeah, so I think there are going to be a lot of machines that perfectly fine machines that are running Windows 10 next year that's effectively out of support, but whether people will upgrade or carry on, we'll just have a lot of people running unsupported versions of Windows 10. I would thought that would probably happen, because we had it with Windows 7, really, didn't we, where people kept running that for years, and then every now and again Microsoft would release a fix if there was something pretty critical. I think we even had an XP one not that long ago, didn't we? That was yeah. So the interested to see what happens with the Windows. Like I said, I think there's an event next month, so I am expecting announcements around AI stuff. So I've not been briefed or anything like that, so I have no inside information on that. But yeah, I think that's what we're going to talk about. Potential new surfaces, maybe looking at consumer side of things as well. Maybe we'll see a consumer Surface Go, although there's nothing wrong with the consumer this business one for me anyway, but there are rumors of new surfaces for consumers, and maybe ARM powered stuff. So maybe this year is ARM's year. We'll have to wait and see, but I'm looking forward to that, to see what that will be. I still need to think about getting a new music PC. My old laptop is getting a bit along with the two for the music stuff, it's getting more demanding, and I'm thinking of last time I got a laptop for convenience because I thought I might need to move it around. Now I don't need to, so I think I might go back to a desktop. I haven't bought a desktop for years, but I think for the music stuff, because it's all tied into what's in here, it seems a little point in being on a laptop. And I think you can get a better spec of machine, can't you, for same money if you without being a laptop, and you can upgrade it and things like that. So
I've just found that news article. So it's Intel SST driver version 10.29.0.555152 or 10.30.0.5152. If you had either of those, and then SST stands for Smart Sound Technology from Intel, and it's for the 11th generation Intel Core processors. If you had that combination, then you wouldn't been able to upgrade since November 10, 2021, and you will be able to now, because they've cured the blue screen of death, which was occurring with them.
That's good, yeah.
And have released the release hold.
Upgrade hold. That's good, yeah. So I think perhaps, just trying to get as many of the machines on the compatibility list, as in they've got the right processor, but with the little.
Yeah.
It's took them a while to do that, though, hasn't it?
It has, yeah.
But it's good to see that they've got that on there. So yeah, so I'm just deciding what to do with a PC, but I think we'll get Pete Brown on from Microsoft to talk about PCs and music spec PCs, because he's definitely the man for that kind of stuff.
He is indeed.
I'm talking about music stuff as well. Next week, I'm going to be trying something a little different. As regular listeners and viewers will know, I've been doing a lot of sound design, particularly for the mod wave, and I've been doing a lot of samples and things like that. So I'm going to have a go, because a lot of people ask me for different things. Can you make this sound? Can you try and make this sound? Can you do Kraftwerk, or can you do Genesis? So we'll have a go at doing this on a live stream. So we haven't done a live stream we used to do them quite often. Actually, we used to do them weekly, didn't we? But I never felt we were getting that much benefit, and it was very complicated to get it. Things have moved on a bit now, so I'm using XSplit. I'm going to be doing that next week. So that's next Tuesday's show, which is the 23rd, 8 p.m. UK time, which I think is 12 p.m. West Coast US time. So that's at 9 p.m. Central European time. On our YouTube channel, are going to do a live stream. So I've already got a couple of bits and pieces of sound design in mind, but I've had quite a few requests. But I'm going to take the mod wave and I'm going to try and make some sounds on it as a sort of tutorial as we're going through on the live stream next week. So hopefully some can join us on that one. I will record it anyway, and then that'll be on the YouTube channel as well. So something a bit different to try a bit of sound design. So interesting whether I can balance managing the streaming tools, the chat thing coming in, and doing the content and this all at the same time. I'll give it a go.
I hope the demo gods are kind to you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So hopefully I can get everything working. So yes, I'll give that a try. So if it works, we might try one in the future, and you never know. So we might do we might start doing some more live stream ones as well. But yeah, we'll see. It'd be a fun experiment anyway. So I thought I'd give that a try. Because I've got a couple of sound design collections available as well. The last one I did was a Pink Floyd sound set for the mod wave. So I've been doing modeling different instruments. So this time I thought I'll do it the other way. I'll have a go at doing the actual sounds. So if you think the opening of Shining Crazy Diamond with that sort of soft pad sound coming from Selena, and the sort of Mini Moog lead sound, I've got that. And I've got sounds from Animals and Wish You Were Here, all the way up to the Wall Division Bell. So I picked through sort of some of my favourite sort of sounds from that and recreated those. So they're on a free download on our YouTube channel as well. And I also came across one of the things that the mod wave does, and the wave state, which is kind of its related synthesizer, is you can import samples. Korg have a tool called Sample Manager, and you can create your own samples, and you can import wave files and then push them to the synth. So I was playing with those. So I've got a whole load of the publicly available these, but I've got the original Fairlight samples. A couple of them I've got are actually from Peter Gabriel's sound collection, but they're available on the internet. But what I've done is I've downloaded them, brought them into the Korg Sample Manager, set the loop points, so trimmed this, clean them up, pitch them, tune them so they're all tuned right, because some of the tuning was off. I've done the loop, so if you hold down the note, it just, like a sample is just a recording, isn't it? So I've made it loop so it doesn't click, and I've done all that, and I've built that into a collection. So that's coming soon. But I've got some of the real classic sounds, like the R sound that you hear, on Tears for Fears, and others have used that, Genesis and Peter Gabriel and others. So I've got that R sound. I've got the orchestral strike that used by Pet Shop Boys and everybody else in the 80s. I've also got some of Owner of the Lonely Heart samples. And I've got quite a few just for strings. I've managed to recreate the string sounds from Run Up That Hill as well, from Kate Bush track as well, because I spent a bit of time just it's quite. I've got the raw sound, and then I've listened to the headphones, A and B in them until I got it right as well. So I've got this collection coming. So there's a few steps you need to get that into the synth. So I actually created a little tutorial on that, so I didn't have to sort of explain it on every sound set I've done. So there's a beginner's guide to working with samples on the mod wave and the wave state, and the sample files that you can use to test out the process. And then maybe next week I'll have a bigger set of sounds from the Fairlight. But some when you hear some of those raw sounds, you realize how impressive the job some people, the artists did with the Fairlight. People like Trevor Horn, Pet Shop Boys, and Kate Bush, and Peter Gabriel, who took those. Some of them sound, by modern standards, fairly crummy. 8-bit samples, 2 seconds long, if you're lucky. Less than that. Not very high fidelity. And then how they work with those sounds in the original recordings in the 80s to make them sound as rich and impressive as it shows the skill of the technicians and the musicians at the time. But anyway, you've got access to those now, so you can incorporate those. So we'll have a quick look at that maybe next week on the live stream as well. But yeah, look out for a sample set of that. And also this week, by the time this show comes out, I've got a new collection of model sounds, and that's the Genesis collection, which is based off my favorite group, Genesis. So that's Tony Banks, Genesis. So I've been listening to some of the classic sounds. I know them all top of my head now. I've listened to so many times, and recreated those on the mod wave as well. So not using samples. I haven't recorded them. This is a proper recreation. So Watch of the Skies, Merlotron intro I've got, in the Behind the Lines, Invisible Touch, all those sounds, all the eras, ARP Quadra, so right from the 70s right up to the 90s touring sounds that they used as well. So that's a set that's hopefully coming out this week as well. So that's captured 2 of my favorite artists. And I actually had an interesting one that someone actually sent me. Do you remember Akai used to make synthesizers?
Crikey, that's a blast.
Yeah,
blast, as they say.
In the 80s they did. I mean, obviously they made samplers, which became mainly known for. But they did, before they did samplers, they did do synthesizers. And someone contacted me, and we were chatting about stuff and he's given me access. He's multi-sampled his Akai analog synthesizer, 10 gigabytes of samples, put them in OneDrive, shared the link to me, and I've got access to all these. So I've actually recreated some of them. Samples and building them as sample sets. So I'm releasing that in a few weeks when I've worked on that. But that's quite interesting. So that got me down a rabbit hole of how do I then make these multi-samples. You can use an audio tool, and press the C note, and then you save it, and then you trim the ends off, and then you got to transfer it. But there are some auto sampling tools out there. One called Sample Robot, which is quite expensive, which is what I was thinking I might do, and sample the DX7 and the DX100 that I've got. But I found someone sent me a link to another idea, which is there's a application from Akai, actually, Akai Professional, MPC Beat it's called, which is a music, sort of a freeware music, or their free music production tool that you're supposed to use with their machines, their hardware, software. But it's got a auto sample tool in it, and you can use that. You don't have to have the Akai software. So I had a quick play with that today, and that seems quite interesting. So what you kind of do, you pick your sound on your 1980s synth, and via MIDI, this plays the note, records the audio version of it. You multi-sample, so you've got one of each octave or something like that. Does all that and saves it, and then somebody else contacted me and said, "Oh, I've got this great tool for converting one format to another that happens to work with the Korg format." So a combination of all these tools mean I can create these multi-samples now. So I think that's my next job, is to get my old synths out and actually sample them. But it's quite. I've not really done a lot with sampling over the years. I prefer to actually create the sounds rather than just record them sampling. But it's kind of a hybrid that I'm doing with these now. So I'm getting the raw files and then creating something with them. But yeah, it's quite an interesting way of doing things. You lose the control. I like, when you with a synthesizer, you can adjust every parameter and you lose all that, but it gives you some other stuff. So yeah, quite interesting. Trying to find the best way to do it. There's so many different tools available, but I'll include a link for that MPC one in the show notes, and also I'll have to remember to include a link for the sample editor as well. So hopefully, as I put all these tools together, I'll come up with. And it then becomes interesting to try and get all in, sample them, and maybe make a library of them, and then move it on. You get rid of it and get onto your next synth. So I know a lot of people that do that. So yeah, a lot of possibilities on there. So anyway, don't forget to join us next week then. So that'll be the start. We'll have a go at doing that next week. And I've really enjoyed the suggestions that people have been sending over to me. Someone's asked for a Kraftwerk sound set. That was one thing that someone asked for. So that sent me on a bit of a rabbit hole of listening to Kraftwerk for the last couple of weeks, which I've really enjoyed. I like Kraftwerk, but I'm not, an avid listener of it. But the last week I've been listening to a lot of the Kraftwerk, so I enjoyed doing that as well. So that'll be next week on the show, and then we should be back the week after with our regular type show. And like I said, we try and get some guests on as well to talk about different things. So I think that was everything I had for this week. I don't know, you had anything else?
No, nothing else I can think of for this week. It's been a quiet week news-wise, and hopefully things are coming up. I think we'll have more.
Yes,
more
there's some interesting Microsoft stuff coming up as well. Yeah, and what's your state of charge now?
My state of charge now is 97% with 8 minutes left, and it's pretty amazing to be able to get to 100% in that sort of time, because this last bit is charging particularly slowly, but yeah, and I've got 222 miles of range, which isn't bad for this temperature. So yeah,
that's good. All while doing a podcast.
All while doing a podcast, yeah.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Right, so where can people find you and your channel?
You can find me on YouTube on the EV Owner channel. New content coming up quite regularly. I had a couple of really good interviews from Fully Charged live, which I put up there. Probably a bit long for this show, but they're quite interesting. One with Andy Till on it from Andy Till, as he goes by now, Mr. EV. Really interesting conversation on that. So if you come and find my channel and you'll find out. No, you can also find me on the X's, the Twitters, whatever you want to call them, and all that for social media at Garry 2Rs.
Excellent. Right, well, we'll be back with our live show next week, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks, Garry.
Great stuff.